I hate dolls. I really cannot stand those dead eyes. I'm in the middle of my life and I still hate dolls. There is something creepy about those little, lifeless eyes, painted faces, and just general creepiness that makes me feel uneasy. Even to this day, my wife teases me about my hatred of dolls. When I was a boy, I can still remember it like yesterday. I was 6 years old and we lived in a remote farmhouse. I loved it there. I had a small motorcycle that I'd ride all over the property and chase the sheep. One day I returned home from school and my happy life as a child was going to end. Upon entering my room, I saw it hanging on the wall. It was a ceramic doll. Its face was painted white and black like a sad clown. It wore a silk outfit with black pom-poms as buttons. Automatically I felt the hairs on my body stand up. I wanted to run and hide from this clown that was hanging on my wall. The one thing that scared me the most was its eyes. They followed you wherever you went in my bedroom, and that scared me to death. The first night alone in my room with that doll was horrifying. I could feel its eyes on me. They glowed orange as my nightlight illuminated the room. I could see them staring at me, longingly. Then I heard it. It was a noise that I'd never heard before, and it was coming from under my bed. It was a scratching sound, like metal against a wooden floor, and it was getting louder and louder. I was too scared. I wanted to look under my bed, but I dared not look. So I did the only thing a child could do in my situation. I ran to my mother. The tears flowed down my face and I begged and I pleaded to my mother not to let me go back into that room. I was scared. My mother took pity on me and let me sleep with her and my father that night. The next day I was playing in my room and that doll was still staring at me. I felt scared, but I wanted to play with my toys. That noise started again, scratching and scraping. I gathered my strength and I looked under my bed, and to this day, I still can't believe what I saw. There was a head of an old woman staring at me, its mouth agape in a silent scream. I ran to my mother and told her what I'd saw under my bed. She thought I was making it all up, an overactive imagination, she said. My mother looked under the bed and there was nothing there. From that day, I could not go back into that room. My father was getting angry with me and started berating me about my wild imagination. I was apparently too much of a coward for my father. After a week of not going in my room, my parents removed the doll from the room and they put it into their bedroom. Suddenly that feeling of dread and horror that I had was gone. My room felt safe again. I returned to sleeping in my room and I was no longer plagued by those horrible feelings that I was being watched. The doll was never spoken about again. About a week later, I had to go and collect some firewood. I went outside to the fire heap and I noticed something. On the chopping block, there was that damn doll, but it had been shattered into pieces. I found out later that my father had taken the doll outside and chopped it to pieces with his axe. To this day, I have a hatred of dolls, and I will not allow them in my home. You do not know what evil spirits attach themselves to those lifeless things, and you know those dead eyes are always watching you. All Filipinos know of the White Lady of Balate Drive. I want to recount a story to you that was told to me one dark night when I was sitting and talking to my Filipino friends. We spoke of the Aswang, the Manananggal, and various other Filipino folk tales, but one stood out above them all, which was the White Lady of Balate Drive. When I was in my 30s, I worked as a taxi driver in Manila. As you might imagine, Manila is a horrible place to drive. The brightly coloured jeepneys, billion motorcycles all swarming around like bloody flies, buses, and other crazy drivers. One day I received a fare from Naiya, which is the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, and I had to take the fare to Quezon City. This was an extremely long fare. It was late in the afternoon, so the roads were chaos. The sound of horns blaring, people weaving in and out of traffic, and of course, the congestion. After spending over an hour driving, we finally made it to our destination. I pulled up outside the apartment building and let my fare out, and then I set off on my way. It was starting to get late. I was trying to get one more fare before I went home. I was unfamiliar with Quezon, so I drove around aimlessly for a while hoping to find someone. I was just about ready to give up, and then I saw her, waving me down. There was a woman standing on the side of the road. Her long black hair hung down to her waist. She had light olive-coloured skin, and she was wearing a beautiful white dress that flowed down below her knees. I pulled my car over to the side, and she opened up the door and climbed in. Looking in the mirror, I did not realise how beautiful she was. She was a real classic beauty. I asked for how long she'd been waiting, and she replied in a sweet voice, "Feels like it was a long time. I'm glad you stopped." I pulled off the curb and started driving. We chatted for some time, and before long I realised I'd forgotten to ask where she was going. "Excuse me, miss, where are you going tonight?" There was silence. She did not answer. I asked again, and still no answer. I started to feel a little worried, so I glanced over my shoulder, and in retrospect, I really shouldn't have. I heard someone screaming in a high, shrill pitch that hurt my ears. I let go of the steering wheel and I covered my ears. That's when I crashed my taxi into a balate tree. When I came to in the hospital, my wife was next to my bed, holding my hand. She was happy when I woke up. She called for the doctor to come and examine me. He was a short, fat man. He sat down next to me and started speaking. His words were fuzzy and sounded muffled, almost like someone pushed a pillow over my head and covered my ears. It turns out, both my eardrums were ruptured, and I had a nasty gash on the side of my face. After a while, he got up and left. My wife asked me what happened, and I explained about the passenger and what transpired during the fare. I did not want to tell her what I saw when I turned around. It scared the life out of me, and to this day, I still cannot sleep without seeing her. When I turned around in the taxi, what I saw scared me. That beautiful woman was not beautiful anymore. Her face was bloody, and the skin across her cheek was torn open. I could see her tongue through her face. One of her eyes was hanging out of its socket, and her face was covered in dried blood. Her hair had been torn out, almost like she'd been scalped, and that beautiful white dress was a bright crimson red, with smeared patches of white. She screamed at me that it was my fault and lunged at me, trying to claw at my face. "You killed me and left me. Murderer." It turns out the scream I heard, that scream was mine. It was so loud, it ruptured my eardrums. My wife was stunned after I told her about what I saw. Then she paused for a moment and said to me that I was found slumped across my steering wheel on Balate Drive. The story of the White Lady of Balate Drive is a Filipino folktale about a teenage girl that was run over and killed by a taxi driver. The taxi driver then took the girl's body and buried it near one of the Balate trees on Balate Drive. It is said her spirit now haunts Balate, seeking retribution on all the taxi drivers that travel through the area. She is said to either flag down a taxi driver and then transform whilst they are driving, causing the driver to crash. Or, if the taxi does not stop, she'll appear in the back seat of the taxi, and then she'll attack the driver. Now, are you brave enough to take a taxi down Balate Drive? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the 2 stories today. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. And remember, keep watching for what is in the dark.